Hello, everyone. And actually, we are saying good morning from Los Angeles and good evening from Wales because we have a very special guest. I'm Dr. Esty Hess.
And I'm Dr. Ann Kirsch.
And we are on and off the Spectrum podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, as I mentioned, across really the continents in the world. And so happy that you're joining us. David Richmond has come to us, and David has a very interesting story in terms of being diagnosed with ADHD later in life, how you navigate that when you find yourself in a neurotypical family.
Yeah.
And then he also had to navigate a very tough scene for any of us, but particularly if you're trying to navigate with ADHD, and that was the passing of his beloved mother from metastasized breast cancer, and that was about 2 years back.
Yes, yeah,
That's a nightmare. I'm so sorry. My heart goes out.
Yeah,
So thank you. So we're going to just get started with our podcast, and just to ask you first of all, David, thank you for joining us, and I know that you're navigating life on your end in the evening, so thank you again for being part of that. But talk about getting diagnosed later in life. How old were you, first off, when you were diagnosed formally?
38. So it was last March. So it was March 2025. So yeah.
March, so just recently, March 2025.
And this is a very interesting topic for me because this is what I did my doctoral dissertation on ADHD. And so I've always worked with children, teenagers, adults, every age. And most people don't realize that this is not just something that happens with children. There are a surprising number of adults who get diagnosed as adults. That doesn't mean it automatically, all of a sudden, popped up. But right? But there were symptoms, and you were dealing with struggling, pushing yourself through school, through other things in your life, because it's there earlier. It's just diagnosed later.
Later, yeah.
So a question that I have too, along with a million other questions that we will both have, is, was it a relief to get the diagnosis, or how did you feel about getting the diagnosis?
It was a huge relief for me. It was a really overwhelming. I remember the call very well. Sat at the top of the stairs, talked it through with the clinician, and then cried solidly for a good 30, 40 minutes.
It's a very common response because finally knowing that there's a name for what you've been doing all on your own in many ways.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I'm curious though, what propelled you at the age of 37 to say, I want to do the formal testing and get a diagnosis?
Mm-hmm.
I was getting really fed up with the yin and yang of, am I suffering with anxiety and depression in general, and that's then creating the autistic or ADHD traits, or is it the other way? Is it the traits that are causing? Is it the actual ADHD and the autism? Because I do believe I've got autism as well, as I'm waiting for that referral as well as.
And by the way, that's 75% of persons who have ADHD also are on the spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's not an unusual combination. So I appreciate
there's normally a comorbidity in there somewhere. There's another one somewhere. So I expected I'd have another one at some point.
Yeah.
But so the original. So that's why it was that kind of just swinging back and forth all the time. Is like, which one's creating what? And I just thought it's time to ask the question. It's easier to just do the assessment and then say you're 100%, just to put that kind of unease and that question at the back of my head to rest. Because I've always had an element of mental health, but I wasn't sure to what degree was from a neurodivergence, and now I know it was all from a neurodivergence from a young age. So combined is what I was diagnosed with. So they said it was more, I would have been more hyperactive as a child, and then gone into inattentive it later in life.
So for our viewing audience, let's make that distinction. There are three categories of attention deficit.
Yes.
There is the hyperactive, where you have a motor going on inside of you and you have to go, and with actions and or thoughts. There is the inattentive. It's very difficult to organize. ADD, just to sustain your attention. And now they call it just ADHD globally.
Yes.
Or like yourself, David, you have the combination of ADHD, the hyperactivity, which evidently showed itself earlier when you were younger, and then inattentive as you age.
Here, I know that in our field, we tend to make the distinction between ADD and ADHD, or the combined version of it, because people need. I think we both have this experience. I certainly have. If I just say ADHD, someone will say to me, invariably they'll say, yes, but I don't fall off my chair. My kid doesn't, fool around in the classroom. It's more the inattentive part. So
definitely that was me. Yeah, definitely me.
How young were you when you started to notice, or when you look back in school? When did you start to notice?
I just said I noticed much more when I was in university. I would have said was for me. I would have said university kind of more is when I started to suffer with the anxiety and the depression and kind of worrying about things constantly, and not being able to walk into a room without somebody coming and meeting me outside. I had to have that kind of somebody come and see me first. I didn't like walking into a room, and so that unease came at university. But when you look back, in terms of, I don't remember much of my childhood anyway. I don't remember before 9 years old. I always say 9, but when I think about it, it probably was more. It's patchy between 9 and 13. Yeah. I don't remember much at that point. So that was always in itself difficult with the assessment, because they were like, tell me about your childhood, and I was like, yeah, don't really.
Well, okay, so formally, our Bible for diagnosing, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, says that all these things are supposed to happen before the age of 7. But if you've got a lot of, I'm going to make an inference, but it's not an absolute by any means. If you've had some traumatic experiences, sometimes it just blanks out those years, and that's the body's way of trying to cope. So I can appreciate the fact that your memory starts at the age of 9.
Absolutely, it's very common.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all right. So now you're 9. Did your parents, your mom and dad, did they make any kind of awareness, or I don't know? I mentioned I was recently in Scotland, and it's a wonderful, wonderful country, but there are limited services. And so I'm wondering if it's a similar kind of scenario in Wales, where you're not going to necessarily travel to London to get assessed. So what do you do with this information?
What's your story?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm in England, to be honest. So not Wales. So I'm in just in that one. So just
okay.
But England's the same. We a lot of people are going through referral, which is called the right to choose pathway. So it's private operated with NHS kind of referral pathways. Right. The NHS pathway in its own, so the National Health Service, is quite lengthy. So there's somebody I know locally who's been on that waiting list for coming up to 6 years, and the NHS one, and still hasn't had any pathway, whereas the right to choose pathway can move within 12 to 18 months, depending on which provider you get. Right. And you can choose which provider you want. So you can say, I know this waiting list is only 6 months, or so you can choose who you like.
Even that, truthfully, in terms of getting care, is outrageous. If you're suffering and to have to wait a year to a year and a half is considered a good wait list. I mean, so it just shares with you how you navigate and would likely have an increase of anxiety and depression, because right now you're not being treated.
Yeah,
and
so
also mental parts that you were going through that no one was addressing, and you were dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. And still now, So I was diagnosed. Had the assessment in January 25. I didn't get the result until March 25.
Wow.
And then I've only just entered titration, so for ADHD medication.
Wow.
And that was 3 weeks ago when I had the clinician call, and I still don't have the drugs.
So
I'm still chasing the drugs. Yeah.
So you're still chasing it. So the
Still
process
chasing.
of getting diagnosed,
Yeah.
and then waiting till you get clinical care, and then for a psychiatrist to say, yes, indeed, here are some medications that could help, and then still waiting for that.
Yeah.
And it's approximately a year and almost a year plus more to get it. All right. So
and then once you get the medication and you start it, I mean, we know here and everywhere, you should be followed up pretty soon afterwards to see how the medication is working in your body.
Right.
What happens there? How long between the next meeting?
Should have been fortnightly. I think it was either fortnightly or monthly review.
Okay, so that's not terrible.
So yeah, the 7th of March was when I had the first. 7th of April. So we're now coming up to, we're well over that time. But because I've not had the medication, they've not have anything to follow up on, have they? So
so everything is still waiting. So we're going back. So your parents were not necessarily aware of the problem. They considered you what kind of a kiddo?
I would have said just a generic, a kind of insular kind of lad. I always wasn't really outgoing as a kid, as younger kid anyway. As an adult, definitely went a bit crazy. But as a younger child, I was always much more like the quiet one. Didn't really get into big social groups. Would always keep myself to myself. I was quite happy playing in my own little space.
Right.
But yeah, in later, like when I got into my teens, then it was a bit more like, well, now I'm a bit more. I went to uni, went to college on my own, started to have a drink, and started to get a bit more social out there and mix with people. And that's when I started to get a bit more, have a few more kind of, difficult kind of scenarios for myself. Probably get too drunk, lose your keys, lose your phone, things that people do. But obviously,
interestingly, I'm wondering if you might have taken some, consumed alcohol as a way to reduce the anxiety, or become more social, and or like maybe relax, and maybe life was a little bit easier on some level. But that's a beast that kind of
self-medicating is a very big part of this.
I call it the anxiety. It's like we hungover and anxiety. It's like the hungover anxiety is what's the worst bit of it afterwards.
Hungover and anxiety.
On that moment you feel great, but then the day after you still return. You still return to that element, but then if not worse.
So you can develop alcohol consumption issues just from trying to find a way to remedy yourself. And so but
luckily I didn't go down that route. Luckily I just had a social drinking. I didn't go to excess, but
I'm appreciative of that. So I'm speeding up the timeline a little bit because you meet and a lovely partner, and you marry.
Yes, so married, coming up to 4 or 5 years now. Yeah.
Okay, and was your partner, were they aware that you might have had, this is prior to diagnosis, but that there were certain elements of your childhood, adolescence, young adulthood that you were really challenged in terms of organization and focus and so forth?
Yeah, and they knew about the trauma as well, that kind of those kind of concerns that I'd had. So I don't mind saying it, but it's about like my dad. I didn't see my dad since I was a younger age. Dad, looking back, Dad probably was the one with ADHD. He was probably the hyperactive. What I remember of him was always very reckless, into drug use, a bouncer, club at the nightclub kind of scenes. And one very definite when I remember him is buying me a motorbike when I was so small I couldn't even get on the thing. It was so big. it was this motorbike, but I remember him buying me it, and then when I look at it now, I think, well, that was obviously impulsive for him. He obviously thought, oh, I just want to buy this. I want to get it for him, but there was no way on earth I couldn't even stand on the stirrup to get onto the motorbike. So
impulsive, several things: impulsive, and maybe his own wish for speed, to for his adrenaline rush, or the need for his own dopamine push, that he projected it onto you. But we also know that ADHD and some variations of autism are genetic. And so you're saying, if I look at it, it was my dad. So part of it was also being a child of what you described, when you use your words, as a reckless parent. And that's, I would imagine, would have been kind of frightening. As I said, on the one hand, here's a motorbike for you. I can't even get up on the pedals, Dad. And what's the meaning of not being able to please Dad, right? In this context of this gift that he gave.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah. That here you're given this amazing present, but it's so inappropriate. Yeah. And it's from your father.
Right.
And you want to please your father, and it's exciting to have, but there's no way you can use it. So it's like all of these things are colliding for you emotionally and in your head. How do I handle this? How did you handle it? You couldn't get up on it, you said?
No, I really don't remember the conversation. I just remember it just being a ridiculous conversation between my parents at the time, saying like, "Oh, what have you bought that for? It's going to be you're going to have to send it back because you can't have it." So, but they were separated at the time, so it was one of those when I was visiting him at the weekend. So I don't know if it was a bit of a one-upmanship. If it was one of those where he was thinking, "Oh, if I just buy this, then it'll show off," but it was irrelevant.
So, I mean, having separated parents who are now squabbling about a gift for you, and how did that make you feel?
Again, because I don't really remember that much about it. It was one of those I can't really comment. But I just remember, I always remember like a resentment towards him for thinking that was something like plausible. He could have bought me something else, or could have invested in my life in a different way that was actually more beneficial. Whereas actually buying me that was I feel like it was just a bit of a showmanship.
Right. David, first off, we appreciate so much you opening up about your life. It makes me wonder, the challenges of it. I'm guessing your mom was neurotypical, that the fact that she was saying, that's an inappropriate presence she was recognizing. And the fact that your folks were separate, there's a higher incidence of separation and divorce amongst individuals with both ADHD and certainly if there's a comorbid diagnosis of autism. What's the quality of your marriage now? Your wife is neurotypical. You're married now going on 5 years. You had a big smile when you mentioned that. So things are good, and you have children.
Yeah, 2 children. Yeah, we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, life's great. I said I'll do anything to be a dad that not the same as him. Basically, that's what
so that's the repair, not to be like him. Okay.
Yeah, that's what my main aim is always to not to get to that point. Hence why I need to learn more about my ADHD for it not to trigger where my trigger points are, what can then set me off, what can make me frustrated. But I'm really open with the kids, incredibly open with them. Obviously.
Are you working with a therapist, a psychiatrist, someone now who is guiding you, or are you?
So an ADHD coach we have on our side. Yeah, so an ADHD coach. Yeah, that started. I don't know if you know about Access to Work as well. From the NHS side, we have a government grant that can be granted to us to retain us into employment that we can apply for to the government, which is called Access to Work, and that fund then applies either for software adaptations or anything that's beyond reasonable adjustments within work. So that was paid for via Access to Work.
So we're located in California. We have something called the Regional Center. There are 18 regional centers in the state, and you can, if you are shown to be, either having developmental delays or cognitive impairment, you can become a regional center client, and they can provide similar. The state then pays for having someone to be with you at work if you need it, or give you some kind of, it's through the Department of Rehabilitation to help adults enter the workplace and be successful.
Yeah, very similar then. Yeah, very similar.
Similar ideas.
Right.
So, but how does your wife, and I don't know if your children have yet to be diagnosed, if it's even necessary, how is that? Because you introduce yourself as a neurodiverse individual in a neurotypical family, and how are you managing?
I call it the neuro outlander, kind of like the one on the outside.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
So yeah, no, we work really well. It's if I get to a point where I'm too triggered or too sensory overload or kind of need some support, my wife will be really good to know and see the trigger or to intervene, and I'll say, right, I think it's time for you to step away or do what you need to do. So instances where there's been one where my daughter was constantly saying she didn't want me anymore, she didn't need me there, and a lot of people would normally just go, come on, it's all right. Well, for me, the RSD kicked in, the rejection sensitivity. I was like instantly like, well, why don't you want me? What's wrong? And I actually cried in front of her. And my wife came in, she was like, right, what's going on? And I just said, just said these really hurtful things. And she was like, right, remember, you're the adult, she's the child. I know it's upset you, but let's take a break. You go out for a little bit, regroup, and then come back.
She sounds wonderful. Hold on to her with
she's great. Honestly, she is great.
But I'm curious.
She does with a lot.
I'm curious because when you first meet someone and you start dating them, and how soon did you, I know you touched on this, but how soon did you start to reveal your history, the ADHD? I don't know if you had the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis at that point.
I still don't have it. I'm going through the referral.
Okay, it's a supposition,
supposition. My whole question is, how early did you start to tell her about this? And how did she react from the beginning?
So I'd say we were both very open about mental health issues together. We were both very open about that kind of discussion and how we both suffered throughout our lives with it. I would say the real conversations came about if it was more ADHD, autism, the neurodivergence came more around just prior to COVID-19 being coming out, so 2022. I work in an industry where I support people back into work with mental health or disabilities, and I went to a kind of a conference about autism, and I came out of that autism workshop very much thinking that is me all over, and I should really be exploring this. And then then COVID hit and referrals, pathways kind of struggled. But that's when I started to pay for a personal weekly counselling session every Friday. And I said, look, I'm not going to work. I'm not paying for travel. I'm not paying half of the things that I can do to go out anywhere because I can't do that anymore. I've got this pot of money that I can now spend on investing on me. And that's what I did through COVID. I spent the money. I thought, I'm going to have my mum's diagnosis to deal with. I'm going to have COVID to deal with. And they have the isolation to deal with. And also I'm working with people who have got mental health and physical disabilities to get them back into work in a very difficult time for the world. It's going to be a lot for me to deal with. And I decided that was my pathway through.
You found the silver lining in COVID, which I think people are still struggling with. And you said, okay, so I have now time and money, so to speak, that I wouldn't spend otherwise. I'm going to take care of me, which is fantastic.
Did that and put the money away for the wedding.
And your partner was, it sounds like, as interested in these issues as you were, mental health issues, and she doesn't sound like, at least, that she was afraid of this or wary of this. She was all in. She She really was in love with you. You are a lucky man, and she's
Very,
a
very
lucky
lucky.
woman.
Lady, I think that, and then when you find the match, you hold on tight.
Yes.
Oh no, we did. We clicked straight away when we met. It was really, really
It's
quick. I have to
fantastic.
say, it was one of those where you just knew straight away we were like.
Terrific.
I want to take those. We have not such a large amount of time left, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your beloved mom.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that she, in the midst of all this recognition and struggles, and she was diagnosed now with metastasizing breast cancer.
Yeah. She it was ironic because she actually worked for the breast scan unit. That's why she'd always worked there. She was well loved by them all, and it was one of those where she'd just been coughing endlessly for months, and they just said, we just go get it sorted. And I remember she had an operation to drain a lung, because it was that bad, and the first kind of sign I had was we went to go see her on the ward, and I said, "Why are you in a cancer ward?" And she was like, "I don't know." I said, "It just must be it must be a generic treatment."
Oh, she was protecting you.
Yeah.
And she didn't have a clue. Well, she said she didn't know why she was there.
She herself.
She said she didn't, but my mum was very much one of those people who would probably never tell you she did. So, So yeah, that's when it kind of then first, and then I think then she started to think, well, actually, and she did say, told me that she took her notes off the end of the bed and read them, because obviously she worked in that field. She could understand the medical notes at the end of the bed. So that's when she said she started to obviously get me a bit more worried about it. So yeah, it was around that, but she'd obviously been diagnosed before COVID, and then obviously COVID hit. So I was constantly worried if she was going to get it, if it was going to catch her prematurely, COVID would take her out. But Mum actually caught COVID 3 times during the time when she had cancer, and she still came around. So she was a fighter, no end.
How did your ADHD impact you trying to helping yourself navigate this? You have a beloved parent, you're struggling yourself, the world is kind of coming apart in terms of COVID. Thank God you've got a wonderful partner, but all this is going on.
I think all I could do during that time was just look to support her and try and make sure she's sustained and she had enough. We had food coming in for her. She had food deliveries. She didn't have to go out. We could do all the things as much as we could. It was trying to keep her going, kept me going, I think, through COVID. Having regular conversations with her, making sure, because my sister lived with her. My sister used to then go to work as well. So making sure my sister was keeping precautions and keeping distance from her, making sure she didn't create any hazards for Mum. It was a very difficult kind of balance to try and keep of looking at.
Absolutely.
But we did as well as we could. And then obviously after COVID, it was just constantly going with her to appointments, seeing how far she was going through treatment, being there through those kind of scenarios, and then obviously through the decline, spending as much time possibly with her. I changed my working patterns as well, so I could have flexible working, so that I could look after the children a bit for our childcare, but also so they could spend some time with her as well. So it was she only met my daughter. She didn't meet obviously my son. So she only knew our daughter, who's 3. So yeah, it was. I wanted just to spend as much time possible to spend those memories with her before we'd sadly lose her. So because I think I was more realistic in the outcome than what everybody else was. I think that everybody else was just living it day by day, whereas I'd already kind of researched anticipatory grief, looking at those kind of how I'd cope at work, kind of putting mechanisms in for support at work if I needed more time off, how that would look. So I'd done a lot more thinking about it, I think, than anybody else had. On the day of my mum passing, my sister was still at work. she'd gone to work that day. We had to drive and go get her and say, look, mum's not got long, you need to come home. So everybody else was living a normal life, and I'd already kind of said, I need to put a break in. Yeah.
So it sounds like, David, you have had an extraordinary life experience. I mean, you have had obviously trauma associated with history in terms of whether it's autism, but certainly now ADHD. It's made you sensitive to yourself, to be aware of what you might need to take care of yourself, and blessed to have a wonderful partner who was equally open and aware about mental health issues, and can step in. And it's a good marriage is a wonderful dance. Sometimes the partner needs to step in, sometimes the partner needs to reach out, and you sound like you have that. But more importantly, it allowed you to prepare for the trauma of your mom's passing, to be thinking, what do I need to do to take care of her, and whether it's delivering food so she doesn't have to worry about these kind of things, to the point of what do I need to do for myself, if I need extra days off from work, if I need to, and fully sort of being able to cognitively take it in and not run from, obviously something that is tragic on any level, at any degree. So
I think
hats off really to you.
A lot of people have always told me that with ADHD, you will be a fantastic crux for the most worst scenario. Yeah. You will be great in those situations. But if it's something very simple, like going for a bus, or getting something, having an appointment time, that can absolutely ruin your day. But in a crisis, I can always pick up.
You can do it. So that's your superpower, as right?
Definitely, definitely a crisis point is where I'm best at, but I'm worse at anything else. Like common sense is something I don't have.
I think you have given our readership today, our listening audience, a wonderful, wonderful example of survival, of having to recognize, there was no gun to your head as an adult to say, what's wrong. For you, it created so much relief to understand, where is my depression and anxiety coming from? Do I need to address one versus the other, or is there, the embers? What's the real cause? And you were blessed finally, and still ongoing, in terms of the search to get some help with that, and recognize. I think you're unusual. What would you tell our audience? Let's our parting words. If you have, if you're an adult and you have imagined that there's something going on in your life, and for whatever reason your parents, you didn't get the usual course of treatment, like where you would going to a pediatric clinician to kind of figure out what's going on. What do you want to tell people, other adults who might be struggling with the question, am I okay? What's really going on?
Something feels off, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to name it.
Right.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, like that neuro outlander kind of feeling is it's not a deficit, it's a unique perspective that offers a bridge, it offers a difference between the mental health struggles and how to be an effective kind of parent. And I think that's why I've really kind of embraced it. Don't get me wrong, it's not been easy. It's been very, very rocky at points, and have to really kind of negotiate some difficult conversations. But that's what I have tried to really embrace it and try to say, right, this is the difference. I often get from my wife, it's not an excuse. And I'm like, it's not an excuse. But
just an explanation.
It's an explanation as to why I'm doing this. Yeah.
But it's brilliant. What you just said is brilliant, because you can fight it and get nowhere, or you can embrace it, and it does become a superpower in kind of an absurdist way sometimes, but it is who you are. And everyone has something. No one's brain is the same as anyone else's.
Right.
And if you can embrace it, this is the message I'm hearing.
Yeah.
If you can embrace it, you can move forward with strength, with power, with love. And if you are lucky enough to have family around you who love you no matter what, and a wife who will call you out and say, no, we're not going to blame this or call this something else.
Right.
You need to speak nicer to me, or don't yell as much, or whatever it is, and then you listen.
Yeah.
And then you're a team.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
I think that
I did a recent post about that on the Neurodads the page that I run. I did it on there because I said that's the same. It's that sometimes you forget about the joint journey of being a couple.
Yes.
And become so absorbed into your own journey as somebody who's newly diagnosed that you forget about everybody else. And I think that's at this point now, 2 years in. I thought actually it's not. My mum's passed 2 years ago in February. My diagnosis is now getting on an even keel. I know where I am. I'm starting to get there. This is now the time to be a bit more open, and this is hence why you've got me.
You know what, David? I think actually you've just given me an idea, because I'm wondering if we could have you back, but with your wife.
Yes, I was thinking that too.
Because it would be interesting to hear from your partner's perspective.
Yeah.